Okay, welcome back. Yes, I did have to finish chewing my snack. Welcome back, everybody. A few guests with us, and I'll kick it over to Sean to introduce the next half hour.
Yeah, thanks, commissioners. The next half hour or so is a little bit smaller of a table, as you can see through the spaces over here. But I do just want to acknowledge the amount of work that goes into the topic of infrastructure. So you've got Chad Voigt, who's our Public Works Director, County Engineer, and then Tanya Voigt, who is our Planning and Zoning Director. We've got obviously the operational budgets for both the departments, and then we also have a supplemental request that was included in the budget for continued work on the modernization effort or initiative for the zoning rewrite. Just a really quick comment about all that. We are in the final stages of producing that, so you will be seeing that here hopefully pretty soon in the next week, hopefully. But again, that was an effort to really start to move towards modernization of the code for zoning and the subdivision regulations after I think decades of kind of rewriting it on our own. So the diagnostic review that again is in the final stages is sort of that technical review aspect, and now we're looking to move towards the next chapter in that story, which is the implementation and the actual code rewrite that goes along with that. So with that, I would turn it over to you all for any questions or comments, and again, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sean. Who's got a question queued up, commissioners?
For the next step of the diagnostic review, I'm kind of curious why we're not doing that in-house, and why staff is not going to be rewriting that in-house versus having Clarion take that next step.
Yeah, hi, Tanya Voigt, Zoning and Codes Director. So typically, we're a joint board with the Lawrence City office, the planning office. Typically, any of our zoning text amendments or code rewrites are done by the planning office. But the planning office has a limited amount of capacity for an entire code rewrite. And I think that's why you've seen like small tack-ons and changes and amendments kind of one bite at a time. Last year, you guys saw home-based business regulations, and then you saw vacation rentals. And then also when there's not capacity at the planning office, sometimes our staff will bring that for the zoning and code staff. And so I think, at the end of the day, this diagnostic really highlights the need for pretty much an entire code rewrite. We would carry some aspects forward of like recent work done, so we wouldn't be rewriting home-based business regs or vacation rentals or things that have been recently done, but it's really got to focus on rewriting kind of all of the outdated information that tie to infrastructure with applications, being able to look at roads, bridges, what type of road it's on, what's needed, does the road need to be paved, those types of things. So I think really at the end of the day, it really is a capacity issue. It would take some of that work could be done in-house, especially with the diagnostic. It's setting clear goals, which is super helpful to know what type of work to build off of. But it would be pretty big load to carry just internally.
Tanya, last time we did it in-house, it took like, what, 5 years?
4 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Took 4 years.
And that was also kind of a small aspect of it.
Yeah.
That was essentially zoning the ag districts so that people did need to rezone when changes were happening in the agricultural residential zoning districts. So it was not a real heavy lift. It was kind of just a small piece, but it took 4 years. So a lot of the public process is, time consuming, and sometimes that takes a lot longer than we anticipate that it will.
And I'll just kind of add to and very plainly say that it is a really technical legal document when we start to get into it. So beyond that aspect, I think Tanya's hit on the point that, again, that it's a capacity issue. I think we fully intend to have county staff and city county planning staff involved, especially when it comes to the public engagement aspect of that. But I do just want to kind of go back and remind everybody that our framework for our code for these particular chapters dates back to 1966. In 2000, I think, was when we had a diagnostic review the last time, and that sort of changed a couple of things, but ultimately we never moved forward with a full code rewrite, or a recodification is sort of the fun legal term behind that. So could we do it? Absolutely. Would it take a heck of a lot of time and be pretty complex for all the aspects that I've just laid out? Absolutely. But again, I think the commission supported the work with the diagnostic review. This is just simply, moving into the next chapter of this book.
And what is the timeline for Clarion to finish this second step, rewriting
Yeah. So for the supplemental request,
for the supplemental request?
that's I would say we're not sure. We haven't had that level of discussion with them or any other consultant, to be honest. So, I mean, it all really depends on what you all ultimately will approve as a contract and agreement. So how aggressive do you want to be? I would say, efficiency is as efficient as you want due process to be. We could certainly go through and do this very quickly. But I think we all can recognize and appreciate that we want to be very thorough in our approach. So that will inevitably probably add some time to it as well.
So the 300,000 that is in the supplemental request, is that just a base then? Are we not firm on the 300,000 then if we have not firmed up the?
That's correct. So that is just an estimate. We would actually need to go out to bid. And we essentially estimated this on the high end. It will be at least a 2-year process. So this could be something that could be broken into multiple years. But, we tried to ensure that it is going to get done and not be stopped in the middle of a process that's rolling. We did request the entire amount, but it will be a several-year process. And then when we go out for bid and then choose a consultant, then at that point, that cost will come back to you. And our hope is that it could be hopefully lower than maybe what we're asking for. One part of the kind of high end of it is that we are anticipating the want and need from the consultant based on recommendation for a future land use map for the unincorporated area. And that future land use map would designate specific areas for specific zoning, and that's going to take some work.
And then the 300,000, is that, or are we estimating that would be 300,000 per year if it's going to take a couple of years?
That would be total, the full cost.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
How many firms do this type of work?
When we went out for bid for the diagnostic, I think we had 6 consultants that bid just the diagnostic work. And then we had a team, an internal team that include the planning office, our office, public works, sustainability, heritage, and we had a scoring matrix. We interviewed the ones that qualified to be able to interview. I think we interviewed 3 out of the 7 that had good proposals, and then based on that matrix chose the final candidate.
Oh, so for the second part, Clarion's already been chosen.
No, they have not.
Oh, okay, because I thought it was for Clarion to do the work. You would still go out for
We would.
Qualifications.
That's
and
correct.
quote.
And then bring that back to the Board of County Commissioners for approval.
And again, so maybe back to Commissioner Anderson's question a little bit. So the total scope of the project would be, again, we're estimating $300,000, but because of that purchasing threshold, that will come back to you all ultimately to decide what the final scope really looks like and who the consultant is that's doing the work.
And so it looks like that amount then would be put aside as one time into our equipment reserve for zoning and codes, and then it would be there for us to draw out of whenever the commission makes a decision. Okay, and so this is the second funding the potential second piece of the actual code rewrite, but the previous diagnostic was covered in the same way, so it would show up it would have been spent out of equipment reserves.
They have kept it it may have stayed in the operating budget because it was a smaller dollar amount, but we funded it through this mechanism.
Okay.
I don't know that we transferred it to their equipment reserve technically. Yeah.
I have a question that's unrelated to that, and it's also still for Tanya at Codes. Total number of people in your department versus total number of vehicles, like, because I know that, you have site visits and such like that.
Okay, so we have 2 building inspectors, each have a vehicle. And then the zoning and codes office has 2 vehicles that we share amongst all the others. So we have 4 vehicles total and 8 staff.
Okay.
And then Public Works often uses the zoning and codes vehicles if they need to go out to Lone Star to clean bathrooms, or if they need to make a parts run and we have a spare vehicle, because actually Public Works is short on vehicles. And so we really kind of just share amongst everyone.
And secretly, the question is less for you than it is for LDCFM, but thank you for answering it.
Yeah, of course.
I'll ask one more question about building inspectors. So there's 2, and there at times had been like space held for 3. Is that position still being held open, or is that being closed out for our tight budget?
That has been closed out and absorbed into a code enforcement officer position.
Okay, thanks.
And so the code enforcement officer is doing a little bit of dual work. So they do focus quite a bit on building code violations, and they go through the due process on building code violations as well. So they work on the zoning side on violations, but they also work on building code violations.
And that change happened a while back.
I think
Of the 2 that you're thinking of,
2025.
one of those was vacant earlier this year. So that was of the building code inspectors. One of them was vacant earlier this year.
Okay, and so it's showing as a partial or
No,
re-estimate.
should be
In re-estimate, I meant.
in the re-estimate. It's probably a lower amount.
Yeah.
But a full amount for 2027.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, commissioners?
I don't actually have any questions for Public Works, and we'll get to talk about CIP at some point here pretty soon, but I just want to say, I love the way your equipment reserve is spelled out. And if you want to talk to your colleagues across the community, across our departments about that, that'd be super.
Add it to the job duties.
I think that's a role for elected officials, commissioners, since many of those are elected officials.
Consider this the start of that conversation.
Hey, commissioners, if no other questions, then we will wrap this part of our morning up, and we will take a break until 10:30 with our next group. Thanks for being here. Have a good day, y'all.
I could walk you through the changes
Okay.
before we get them to
Yes, thank you for-
10:30, if that would be helpful to save some time here.
Yep, thank you for that
So-
reminder, Sarah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, Tanya. Bye, Chad. Have a good day.
And Brooke can help me out here if I get this wrong. Oh, don't fall down, Sarah. Okay. So commissioners, we've given you a new printed budget request part of the document. That is the line item detail for county departments, and it includes the line item detail for community partners. And I'm going to walk through the changes that we made on that. You have a kind of table at the beginning of that outlines these. This happens. This is a draft document. So we're in the process of making sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's and catching everything so that you all have the best information as possible as we move into deliberations and then eventually set our total budget. So the first several of these are really in revenue. The first one is an adjustment to interest allocation and the property tax rebate program. Yes, in 2026. And Brooke, you're just going to chime in and correct me if I get this wrong. So we realized when we were putting together the revenue budget that it was calculating the distribution of interest incorrectly. So we changed that. And I want to state up front here, all of these changes were to fund balance, not to levy. funds. So any adjustments we made here, we took out of fund balance, and then I'll walk you through what those changes were on the fund balance sheet. Next one was on the court trustee fee adjustment. We talked a little bit about that when court trustee was here. We had used a 5-year average for their revenues, and they've had a decrease in fees. So we lowered that by $41,450. Then we had an adjustment to interest allocation in 2027 related to that earlier issue of how the system was calculating the distribution of interest. And then the next one is we had several adjustments for ECC involving their revenue. So as commissioners know, we charge each city. We have an agreement with each city for paying for the services of the Emergency Communications Center. And we had a deliberative process. We negotiated the amounts. We had a consultant. So that process is pretty much lined out to us in terms of how we do that. A portion of that reimbursement to us is really goes back to the employee benefits fund because it covers the benefits for those positions. When we first gave you this budget, we hadn't moved it to employee benefits. So we made adjustments there. So that money is now going to be in employee benefits. Anything I got wrong on that one, Brooke? It's all related to the benefits moving to the employee benefits fund.
And that's those last two, the smaller lines, the 24,000 and the 30,000.
So this would be the 54,305, the 24,741, and the 30,267.
Thanks.
The next one, shared costs, is a line, the 54,000 in fund and Department 201. That we also get an admin fee from that. So there was an adjustment related to the ECC administrative fee.
It's the LDCFM
Got it.
administrative.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we had a
You've got
correction
it.
there. So it was to that administrative fee. And then that last big number, the $2,724,618, is how we balanced that out and took that out of your cash basis reserve and your fund balance. So that moved our initial fund balance from 25% down to 22%. And so in your summaries, we've also given you an updated information related to where fund balance is now sitting. And so to clarify, so my proposed, we were sitting at 25%, now we're at 22. I've had Brooke calculate the amount, normally we try to peg our fund balance to 20%. That's what we've been doing in previous years. I kept it at 25 because I thought we might have to do some of this. And we have some one-time requests. I wanted commissioners to be able to have some room to consider. If we move from 22% down to 20%, that difference is $2,047,333. We're going to put that on your commissioner's worksheet because I think that's a really important number for commissioners as you're thinking about one-time costs that could come out of the general fund. $2,047,333. So that is, if you could spend that whole 2 million and then we would be sitting at 20% in the general fund. The last adjustment we made is in the behavioral health budget. We did have the $700,000 for Burt Nash contingency counted twice in 2026. So we removed one of those. All that does is impact the fund balance. So we took one of those 700,000s out. You do have a new behavioral health budget included in this, and you have a new behavioral health project spreadsheet, and those fund balance numbers are updated. Your spreadsheets are correct. Jake is just going to check and make sure on a couple of them to make sure that as you, the mill levy impacts are calculating correctly, and somewhere either in that narrative, we're going to put this $2 million number so that you know that. I would say, since I've got a few more minutes before these folks come up, well, I'll wait on that because I want to talk to you a little bit about what I'd like, what it would be helpful for staff to get back when you give us those spreadsheets. So. Do you have any questions for me on these adjustments?
I don't see any
Okay.
questions on the adjustments. And yeah, I think it's a good idea for the end of our time today to
Yep.
level set about what will be helpful for staff to have in the morning when we get back here, and make sure that commissioners have every answer they need about the spreadsheet and new information that we've got.
One other thing, Brooke wants to
Okay.
talk about CFD1 real quick because we made a small adjustment on it.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. And commissioners, we did identify a few areas where we could adjust the values that are in the CFD budget. We do have a fund balance adjustment going into 2027 for changes that were made to the 2026 re-estimated budget. That was about a $30,500 increase in revenue to the fund balance coming into 2027. We also had some movement of some personnel line items, but the net was zero to that, to those changes. It was just moving dollars from one area to another. And that decreased the expenses in those areas. We also increased volunteer standby by $20,000. And then we moved some of those adjustments to the transfer to equipment reserve. And additionally, staff adjusted the lease payment amount, and then we increased the fund balance going into 2028. Commissioners, you should have the itemized detail. Oh, I'm sorry. We will get you the itemized detail for those changes for consolidated fire. But again, no impact to the mill levy for those funds.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners, about those changes for now? Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and take a 3-minute break and see our next group of partners or departments at 11 or 10:30. All right, everybody, welcome back. We are here with our next group of departments, and it looks like I'm turning it over to Jake to kick us off.
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, we have the Land Records and Taxation Group here with us. And before I get started, I'll let the department heads introduce themselves, and we'll start with Brad online.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brad Eldridge with the County Appraiser's Office.
Jamie Shu, County Clerk.
Adam Rains, County Treasurer.
Kent Brown, Register of Deeds.
The Appraiser, Clerk, and Register of Deeds all have status quo budgets this year. The Treasurer's Office has some notable changes, though, largely driven by Senate Bill 325, which the state legislature passed this spring. Senate Bill 325 transitions motor vehicle fees from a location-based fee to a transaction fee. Starting in 2027, counties will be able to charge up to $10 per transaction. The proposed budget assumes a $5 fee for revenue projections, and that's an increase from the current $3 we have now. That fee increase allowed us to move all positions supporting motor vehicle operations from the treasurer's budget in the general fund, supported by property tax dollars, to the motor vehicle fund, supported by those fees. There is one supplemental request in this group from the Treasurer's Office to take over motor vehicle renewal printing from the state, which would allow us to customize renewal forms, inform residents about county programs and services, and open the door to options like renewal kiosks and lock boxes. More details in your budget materials, and we're available for questions.
I would add, I don't think it, in the motor vehicle fund, which is Fund 245, we were able to move all the positions attributed to motor vehicle operations and a portion of, the treasurer's salary and the deputy treasurer's salary, but we did not move the benefits. So in essence, the employee, the fee is not supporting the benefits for any of the employees. That's still being borne by property tax dollars that go to the employee benefits fund.
Out of curiosity, and this may not be math anyone wants on the fly, what would that fee dollar amount be in order to put all of motor vehicle for fees to cover all of motor vehicle? And you don't have to answer that right now when we ask other questions.
It would have to be $10. $10 would fully fund employee benefits, everything, and we would have about $48,000 in excess. But at $9, we would be about $55,000 in a hole. So we'd have to be at $10 to cover everything within motor vehicle.
Okay, appreciate the context.
Just be for this year, if benefit costs go up in future years and salaries.
Other questions, commissioners?
So the fee change from $3 to $5 is entirely under your authority. Is that right? So that happens regardless of any conversation here, but above $5 is a county commission. Can you just talk about who's empowered to do what?
Yeah. So $1 to $5 is within my authority. I can charge any range within there. And then anything from 6 to 10 is within the commissioner. So I can recommend we go to 10. You agree, we go to 10. And then that portion, the $6 to $10 range, will sunset in December of 2029. So we will lose that in at least 2029, given that legislators don't come up with a new plan. That's the goal. So from now till then, they want to see what benefit counties are providing to the customers with the increase in the fees. So there's a committee coming together here in August that will meet with legislators and start proposing ideas and explaining what things that are being talked about doing to increase the customer service. Really, they're looking at some of the large counties where we have long wait times, but they also want to see what smaller counties are doing to improve the customer service.
So if I hear you right, that it's potential for us to make a change in the fees, but they could and pull motor vehicle back under its own fee structure as opposed to under mill levy. But it's possible that we may have to then bring it back in a few years if we don't get action from the legislature, and that's in 2029.
Correct. So if nothing changes, and that $6 to $10 fee sunsets, then yes, we'll be back, trying to figure out what we're moving over from motor vehicle back into the mill levy. So I think that's one of the dangers of going up is that, you are fully funded for 3 years. And then what happens after that 3 years is it goes back and you're still back in the same situation you were 3 years ago. So.
And the fee change from 3 to 5, that's kind of already budgeted in here and that you've, that came under your authority. Does that happen January 1st, or is there was something that gets triggered in July?
Yeah, so the way they passed it is we could change it in July as a July 1. So we kept it the same as the $3. And what it does is it changes from a facility fee is kind of the way we look at it. So anything in person gets charged at $3. Anything online or by mail, Dropbox does not get charged at $3. July 1, it's a $3 transaction fee. So it gets charged to every transaction, whether it's by mail, online, in person, whatever it is, it gets charged at $3. And that's why we see that big increase from like 78,000 to 300,000 for a year. So a big increase because we're charging on every transaction and not just walk-in customers.
Okay, so previously if somebody walked in and had 3 transactions with them where they charged the $3 and now they'd be charged $9 regardless of where they did that?
Correct. So before it's $3 per vehicle. So you have 3 vehicles, you're being charged $9. And that was only an in-person. And now it's wherever you're at, you're being charged that $3.
Okay. And then any conversation to go beyond so the $5 fee then still comes in January of 2027.
Correct. So we have in October, we have the opportunity to change it to whatever we kind of agree on. My suggestion is $5. I think that's where I would go. We can have these conversations more later if we want to, but do we go to 6? And we've had it a little bit a couple months ago. Do we go to 6? Do we go to 10? What does that look like? So I think it's nice that we have this opportunity to get through budget to then have the conversation of where do we want to land on this, because I can go to 5, but it requires all of you to decide if we go to 6 to 10.
But I was thinking that that's part, so if you as a revenue decision decide to go from 5 to 10, it'd be helpful for us to know that for our 2027 budget. So in essence, depending on how you look at deliberations over the next week, if you decided to raise it, you would include that revenue in your 2027 budget, and that would help line out what we need to do in terms of the fee by October.
I believe we went with $5 for the 2027 budget.
As it's currently proposed. But if
Correct.
commissioners would like to go from higher than that, we can do that through this process right now.
Correct. Yes.
Include it, the revenues, what we've budgeted for, and then we would just pass the fee increase before October to go in effect January.
Adam, the 5 is permanent, only the 6 to 10 expires.
Correct. The 5 is permanent the way it's set up now. Of course, if they do any legislation changes, then that, changes everything. But 6 to 10 is the only one that will expire in 2029.
And can you remind us what the counties around us are going to be charging?
I think right now, if I can remember correctly, Johnson County was going to 10, Riley County was going to 10. Haven't heard much from Wyandotte. I think they were looking at 10, but not sure what their commissioners decided on. Shawnee County was going to 7. I think that's all I know for now.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners?
A different question, it's also for Adam. Your narrative also said that this year you stopped processing commercial vehicles, and we still get the tax from that, but who processes them now, and what's the impact on customers?
So KDOR gave us the option in a roughly 2015 to process commercial vehicles. It was an option, we could opt into it, and we did in 2016. 2017 maybe, we started processing it. And so you get the fee from that transaction. I think it's like $10. You get a portion of that. But what we found out was that commercial was very time consuming. There was a lot of information. There's an audit that KDOR does every year. It tells you how well you're performing and doing the work. And we always perform very poorly. Well, I say poorly to my standards. Other counties also, perform poorly too. So we had long conversations about, is this worth it anymore? Because it takes time away from other motor vehicle transactions. It's a very heavy transaction. You could spend 2 to 3 hours, and that's pretty normal. So we had conversations this year about maybe we'd no longer do it. So those transactions will then get processed by other counties. So like Anderson County is what they call a full service. So you can go there, you can get everything done regardless of where you live. You can go to Topeka, get that transaction done. And there's another county close to us that I can't think of right now, but there's three counties in the area that will process that transaction. So we'll lose out on, and I could be wrong, I think it was roughly $80,000 a year we would lose out on. And that's just the fee that we would get from processing that transaction. The tax we would still get from those other counties. So those counties will then send it to the state. The state will then do their distribution back to us, and we'll still get that tax. But the fee we will not get, and that's that roughly $80,000.
And so that change was pretty recent. It was done in May of this year. Are you getting feedback from folks who come in to pay their commercial vehicle tax and being sent?
We have not got any feedback. So their big renewal time is in February. So we did a lot of communication with them, like, hey, we won't be here after May. And so we did a lot of that communication, and honestly, we haven't heard a lot. We didn't get a lot of CMV or commercial vehicles coming in. There was a handful, I would say, but it wasn't something that we were constantly getting those customers in.
Quick question about your supplemental request. How many other counties are printing their own?
One,
And that would be?
Johnson.
Thank you.
It's a tough one because in order to do some of the things that we want to do, and we're looking at the lockbox and we're looking at the kiosk, you have to get this sacred file from KDOR. KDOR protects it. They do not let anybody have it. And so I don't know this agreement or how it came about, but the only way to get that file is to print your own renewals. And obviously that comes with cost. We can have other conversations with KDOR if we would like to say, hey, we just want the file. We don't want to print anything. But you lose out on some of that customization. So what KDOR prints and what your lockbox does is that matching up, and you have no ability to change what's being printed. So it does give us some benefit of, paying by text, paying online. I think there's some other benefits to printing your renewals. But yeah, it does come with a cost, and that is the full cost, roughly $90,000. But if you want to have conversations about partially funding that, I think I could scrounge up a few dollars to pay for some of that. But I think starting out with this and seeing where that conversation goes is a good start.
I have a question for Kent, if people had done it. Okay. So I've been asking a lot of folks about the equipment reserves, and I know that there's some strange rules that kind of govern what happens, especially in your tech fund. Can you just talk about your two funds and how they can and can't be used?
Sure. The technology fund is a statutory fund. I can use it for technology related to the storage and retrieval of real estate records data.
And it's
So-
not that.
Correct.
It's not that. That is the
This-
secondary fund. So the first fund that he's speaking about is later in your narratives, Commissioner. It's here. No, you're on the wrong page. So if you go, the last page of your summaries is the first fund. That's go, and then go ahead, Ken.
Okay. So that one has to be used by my department for technology. We use that to pay for computers, imaging, servers, service contracts, all kinds of things within the department. If I have excess, I can transfer some out at the end of the year. That's probably what you were looking at. The equipment reserve fund for my office is used for things like chairs, desks, tables, Herman Miller chair, like the ones behind you. Those run about $1,800. I have an employee right now who has a 24-year-old chair. So that's more for furniture. The tech fund is explicitly for technology and preservation.
And I think it's the tech fund. It's $440,000.
That's the excess.
Yes.
And that's the one that is very strictly governed by for what you can do with it.
Yeah, so it is if Kent decides he doesn't need it, it is released to that fund. It is still governed by those same rules. It can only be used for land record purchases, but it can be used by the whole organization. So it is used throughout in other part, IT uses it, GIS uses it, other people access that 400,000, and that's built up over time. So that 400,000 has been built up over time.
Yeah, so statute allows me to make an end of year transfer out of my personal tech fund to a countywide tech fund. And that's like GIS uses that for their aerial pictometry, things like that. It gets used by other departments in the county, still for the purpose of technology related to real estate.
Thanks.
If I could make it simpler, I would. I cannot. I mean, this is all outlined in statute.
Yeah.
And actually, everyone at this table has their own little tiny baby tech fund that you see on there as well.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay. Well, thanks for being here this morning, y'all. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye, Brad.
Bye, Brad.
Have a
Bye
good
to
one,
us
guys.
in the background.
I think we have everyone from core services here.
Okay.
If we want to keep moving,
Yep.
give us more time at the end.
Sounds great to me.
You go make sure Jimmy comes in.
All right. Well, I think we've got everybody we need, and we'll kick off the next part of our morning early. And it looks like I'm probably turning it over to Brooke based on that smile I'm getting.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm just going to give an introduction for our core service departments. They're really responsible for the seamless day-to-day operation of Douglas County government as a whole. The three primary departments that support these functions are information technology, or IT, facilities maintenance, which includes buildings and grounds, and administration. Together, these departments ensure that every county office, from land records and taxation to public safety, have the tools, systems, and environments necessary to serve all Douglas County residents. These departments are staffed by 68 full-time employees, which represents just 12% of the entire county's workforce. The administration department acts as a central hub for many of the county's organizational activities, and this team completes risk management tasks, prepares board meeting agendas and minutes, and oversees human resources and employee benefits for more than 1,200 lives enrolled in the county's health insurance plan. They also lead public information and communications for most county departments, coordinate capital improvement projects, and advance sustainability initiatives across Douglas County. Additional responsibilities include contract and grant administration, financial and budget oversight, criminal justice coordination, and support for housing and human services programs. I looked it up yesterday, and this group of individuals manages 130 annual service contracts and agreements. It's pretty remarkable. The maintenance department completes extensive infrastructure projects, which you see right now, ranging from upgrading electrical systems and wastewater piping to repairing or replacing whole HVAC units. In recent years, many facilities have undergone parking lot replacements, sidewalk installations, and concrete repairs to enhance safety and accessibility of county buildings. Staff also completes interior updates such as flooring improvements, ceiling replacements, and general remodeling in shared spaces. Security enhancements, including new access control systems, upgraded generators, steel cell doors, and fire sprinkler replacements have also been undertaken by this team. More recently, the department managed tree removals and installed additional lighting to improve visibility and appearance on the historic courthouse campus downtown. Collectively, this work reflects a commitment to safety, modernization, and improved functionality across all county facilities. The IT department handles more than 200 help desk requests each month and oversees the implementation of new software, hardware, and cybersecurity initiatives in Douglas County. The work includes providing staff training and onboarding support for new employees and departments. The team also leads data analysis efforts, developing dashboards and helping departments make informed decisions. And they manage web and software development. The GIS team supports both internal county operations and community requests. Additionally, IT directs the technology components of construction projects, ensuring all networking and hardware installations are completed successfully and on time. Commissioners, in your budget book, you'll find several supplemental requests from administration and IT. Staff from these divisions are here to answer any questions that you may have. After reviewing these supplemental items, staff will also discuss in a little more depth the employee benefits funding strategy for 2027, and will all be available to answer any general questions as we prepare to go into deliberations tomorrow morning. If I may, I'd like to turn it over to staff to provide introductions. Michelle, I'll start with you.
Threw me off. Michelle Spreer, Human Resources Manager.
Starla Jones, IT.
Jimmy Wilkins, Building Maintenance.
Tony Foster, Director of Emergency Communications.
Thank you, Brooke, for the overview. Thank you all for being here. That was a pretty comprehensive, although I'm sure you might have left some things out even, but that summary packed a punch. So core services indeed. Welcome. Commissioners, questions? We've got, as highlighted, a couple of supplemental requests from IT in particular that we have yet to talk about. And any other questions are on the table.
Also, if we want to have conversations about market merit, this would be a great time to do it. And like I said, I want to talk a little bit about employee benefits towards the end, but after we get done with questions initially.
So this question's for Starla. Starla, your first request is included in the recommended budget, but your second request is not. And I'm trying to understand this is the enterprise solution. Did I say something wrong?
So part of it's partially included and it's partially not included.
That helped me.
Yeah. So the one-time funds for the implementation of the new financial and HR business system are included in equipment reserve transfers. What you see on the budget options lines represents what we believe an estimate, not a precise number of what the ongoing cost for that package will be. We do not anticipate needing to spend that probably till 2029, 8.
So within the ERP's implementation, small solutions will be removed. And so to take the place of our large ERP solution going in. And so some of the costs are going to be removed. And so that's the reason for 2029 being the cost there.
Okay, so I think we outlined in the supplemental materials, we've estimated that the first year cost for 2027 will be closer to 1.8.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to put 1.25 aside into equipment reserve in the 2026 reestimate. I think the rest of those funds, I'm hoping we can come up with at year end to get me to 1.8. Then I think in 2028, the estimates are around 400, 500,000. I would say that I anticipate using one-time dollars next year as well in 2028 to pay for that until we can get to a number that is what is our ongoing cost. We've estimated that I think we got about 130,000 that we're spending right now ongoing to pay for financial, or it's called Finance Enterprise. What an exciting name. And NovaTime, which is our timekeeping software. Those funds would go into whatever the cost is for this larger document. So I don't think we're going to need a full 500K ongoing. I think it'll probably be closer to 350, but we have not gone out to RFP yet. We're still working with GFOA and preparing those RFP documents.
That was really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, this has been one that we had towards the end here and we were trying to make cleaner. So,
but it's helpful to know that the 500,000 ongoing, which is not necessarily to hit today's books, but to have on our radar, but that there will be the savings back from going away from the other software packages too.
Correct.
Some of it. Yeah.
Yep. Some.
So I guess that's my question. If we don't fund that this year, that 500,000, what's the impact?
There is no impact. I really put it in here to show you a future cost so that there was a heads up that this is a large expenditure coming in the next couple of years. So
Got
it's crucial and vital to this organization, but it is not a 2027 cost.
Got it. Thank you.
Senator Dorsey, you have a question? Any other questions?
I have
Commissioner Wiley?
another for Starla. So the supplemental request suggests that that the need for increase in software services was like 1.5 million, but we have 700 built in. Talk to me about that.
Continued cost increases for our software solutions and hardware equipment continue to grow. And in 2024, I started to pull some of the counties' solutions underneath IT so that we would be managing the maintenance and costs. And with that, additional costs continue to increase. So I am asking for an additional 700,000, and that's what was put in for the budget so that we can meet the need right now because I don't have enough to cover everything right now as in my budget.
Yeah, if you look at that line on page 60 of the budget request narrative, her 2025 actuals were over $1 million. So it was a pretty substantial, she was not able to stay in budget on that line. And we're already sitting at 592 for this current year. So, and I think, Starla, one of the things we talked about is, these have been consolidated from a variety of different places, the district attorney's office. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of those departments that you've sort of absorbed those costs. And then I would say then when I meet with that department, then I'm able to lower that software cost and it might be reallocated somewhere else in their budget. But we've been able to reduce those budget lines throughout the budget.
We continue to meet on a regular basis with some of the department heads. And what we do is we do discuss their software solutions. And most of the costs have increased. So like Sarah stated, we have the district attorney's solutions, both Axon and PBK are being covered by information technology. We also have seen an increase in our Microsoft licensing, and we also cover the Microsoft licensing for our sheriff's office. So both of those costs. And if you look, I think I put that in somewhere, those costs continue to increase as well. I am going to mention also, we've in the last year, my information a network manager put together a 5-year plan, and we looked at the costs that we had last year for a few things. One of them being our virtual environment software increased by 360% on their, and if you've done some research, you'll see that that is across the board for most anybody that's using a virtual environment. And then also our network storage devices. We continue to grow here as a county, so we also have continued growth with our storage devices. That increase last year was 170%. So these costs continue to increase, and so we're just trying to make sure that we're staying there.
So I also saw there was a decrease in your line item for technology, hardware, and software. Were some of those kind of swept up into the software subscriptions, or is that something else going on?
So our decrease in the hardware, yes, because continued growth in the cloud environment as well as some service environment versus hardware. So.
Other questions for our department heads?
I'll pitch another one to Starla, if that's right. Sorry. So there's some overlap, or there's some working together with the sheriff's office and their IT, but there's also some pieces that they keep separate. Are we at the most efficient kind of collaboration there, or what are we looking for?
We continue to meet with the sheriff's IT on a monthly basis. We are very collaborative. We just continue to cover the Microsoft. We work together from a security perspective, making sure that we're meeting the security requirements for our insurance, cybersecurity insurance. They are a CGIS compliance requirement for their Spillman solution, and we continue to work with them regarding because we have many of our staff, I think about 180 devices that do have the Spillman solution installed. So we work very closely, but their requirement under CGIS is a little different than our requirements.
Darla's team manages both phones and multifunction devices, so copiers and printers for the countywide. So that's also managed for the sheriff's office, and that hits her budget as well. Sheriff's office has, but I would say particularly with the building of the PSB, relocation of EM and ECC out there in the sheriff's office, there's been a lot of work together over the last year.
We have. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw the bus, the truck outside, but my staff helped with the sheriff's group to move the printers that were a part of the sheriff's team, move those over to the PSB, and also some of the phones. So yeah, a lot of work together.
And who covers the IT needs for ECC?
Sheriff. And it's a portion of his budget is allocated, allocated to support that. I'm sorry, Tony, you can describe more. And partially why we do that is so that the cities can pay a part of that cost share. It's one of the few departments that we do that with anymore. And it's so the cities can help pay that cost share.
Yeah, we're currently under the Sheriff's Department's network, mainly because we are also part of that CGIS requirement to be able to be under a different security settings. And like Sarah said, our budget is self-contained because that way it'll be cost shared with the other cities that participate in our operation.
Starla, just a few minutes ago, we learned that the supplemental request is for future years. The 700,000 is that something that is needed for 2027, or is that also something that is more needed for future years?
Needed for 2027.
Okay, thank you.
Questions, commissioners? Okay.
If not, then yeah, I want to kind of walk through kind of some of the changes with the employee benefits fund if you want. And I definitely want Michelle to stay. But if Starla and Tony and Jimmy, you're welcome to stay. So, as commissioners know, we had to make a lot of changes to the employee benefits fund this year. And one of the things, and Brooke really is the mastermind of this fund. One of the things, so I'm going to let her talk, but one of the things I wanted her to show was kind of what would have happened had we not made some of those transfers.
Thank you, Sarah. And so commissioners, I want to take you back a little bit in time here to last year. Staff had a conversation with this commission about the employee benefits fund and changes that would need to be made to the fund to support the employee benefits in 2027. And I just want to show that, last year when we had this conversation, staff estimated that estimated fund balance into 2027 would be right around $3.6 million. And then staff also prepared another estimate, and I'm going to try and zoom in on this a little bit because it got
I
really
was just going to
tiny
ask
on
if you
us.
can zoom in a little as much as possible for this.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thanks for your patience with that, commissioners. So, staff wanted to show you the effect of not transferring the $2 million from the general fund, which is included in your 2026 re-estimated budget. It's pretty close to what staff saw last year in that fund. And then we also used, if the mill levy would have stayed flat, this is not included in your material. This is just something that staff prepared yesterday. Moving down through the revenues, we've got about 18,837,000 in revenues. But when you go down here to the expense side, we've got almost $20 million, so $19.9 million. The fund would essentially be in the hole by about $1.2 million. So I just wanted to take an opportunity and show you guys that that transfer from the general fund was definitely necessary to bolster this fund and to move an appropriate fund balance of 20% into 2028. I stand for any questions about this funding strategy for 2027. Again, this is not what's included in your recommended budget. Your recommended budget does include a mill levy increase to this ad valorem tax amount here. Staff just prepared this estimate to show you what would have happened had we not made that mill levy increase and made that $2 million transfer into this fund. And this budget, even though it's in the hole, this assumes no fund balance carry forward into the future year. So staff zeroed out that value for that estimate. And this is included in the updated material that we provided today.
And Brooke, I just want you to put a clarifying point on it. The increase in mill levy to the employee benefits came out, it's still, a flat mill levy proposed at this point overall in the budget. It was just moving some of that mill levy into that fund.
Absolutely,
Okay.
Commissioner. You've got it.
Sometimes people only hear those words.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that.
What is the, on that spreadsheet that you showed, Brooke, what is the employee lease program?
Oh, I'd love to answer that. So the employee, we have a couple of different lease programs. One is for the purchase of firearms.
Sheriff's office, yeah.
For the sheriff's office, and then one is for the purchase of computer equipment. So, it's in our personnel policy that the county wants to, if somebody doesn't have a good computer at their home, the county will purchase that computer for the individual, and then it's reimbursed to the county through payroll deduction. So what you'll see on the revenue side is a reimbursement line, and then the sum of those two lease program expense items nets out to zero. So really, we're not levying any tax dollars for that program, and we're just also assuming that the same amount of cash will come back into the fund once that lease is satisfied.
Okay, because I noticed that you had two funds that were exactly the same. Both were $28,000.
Yeah, it kind of varies by year depending on the demand for the lease programs by county staff, and it fluctuates wildly. And so really the most important thing is that the revenue matches the expense in that fund so that we're not levying additional dollars for those lease programs that's really just works as a pass-through.
And then the athletic program, what is that one?
Yes, I am actually enrolled in that, so I'd love to talk about it. The county at open enrollment will provide some enrollment forms to enroll in an athletic club membership. The county pays that membership up front, and then the county uses payroll deduction to satisfy that entire term for the remainder of the year. I will say, if an employee leaves employment, we deduct the remainder of that from their final paycheck. I think mine's roughly around $500 a year. So I just started the plan June 1st. If I were to leave the county would deduct the rest of that value from my final paycheck when I leave.
And do we typically use all 28,000 every year?
Again, it fluctuates pretty wildly depending on participation. Some years we go over, some years we're likely coming in under.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that these are three just payroll deduction benefit-based programs that employees have used over time. So they really are net neutral, and they're really appreciated by employees. The computer program, it's been here longer than I have. I'm always surprised that people still use it, but having it come out of payroll deduction is a great way for, you're not incurring credit card debt, you're not paying credit card fees, and it allows employees to pay for those purchases over time. And then the firearm lease program is exclusively for the sheriff's office and for sworn personnel, and so that they use it then to buy sidearms. And then they pay it back. All of those programs, if an employee leaves, we get our funds back.
Learn something new every budget year.
I know.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's so many lines in our budget. And so I sincerely every year appreciate the things that get picked up on by a commissioner. And we learn a little bit more about. So I had no idea.
Are there any questions about market merit or distribution of market merit? I want to make sure we use this time to get through that if commissioners have questions.
I have a bunch of HR questions.
Go for it.
How many total employees does the county have?
I think Brooke may
I
have
think
it.
we have around 600 right now, 500.
Doesn't have to be exact.
Yeah, around 600.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many positions are currently open?
Oh, gosh.
Not, yeah, we'd have to go look at that number to give
Yeah.
you a current vacancy count.
Yeah.
Just guess.
I mean,
20,
I'd say
30, 50?
I'd say probably 20 or 30.
20 or 30. I was going to say 30. Yeah.
And
not a
what,
lot.
do you know what our turnover rate is per year?
Actually, we do. Brooke calculated it for us, and we're going to put it in your packet of updated materials. Our current 2025 average turnover was 10.8%. The year before it was 10.1. The year before that was 12.9. 2022 it was 16.6. But you'll have, and that we have that broken down by department.
Is that kind of standard for governments? Do you know?
I would say, well, yeah, I mean, it was similar probably at the city when I was there. We've got some, I mean, that's including retirements. So we, like the sheriff's office, they hire, recruit classes. And so you get retirements all at the same time. So yeah, I would say that's probably pretty average.
So that 10 includes the sheriff?
Correct.
Because I would guess he would have higher turnover than other.
And they
Actually,
do, and
he's
tougher
down to
jobs like,
9.7.
like what Tony has, in the sheriff's office, those hard to fill positions, hard to keep filled positions, because those are hard jobs. And people get in there, they try it out and realize, I cannot do this job. This is not for me. So the turnover tends to be a little higher in those departments. So.
Sarah, I was curious if you can just kind of talk to the commission about the downward adjustment in the merit pool this year.
Yeah.
Based on what we've seen over recent years and kind of how you arrived at that 1%.
Yes. So, we always start this process focused mostly on our market adjustment process. We use outside statistical analysis that has national and regional numbers that looks at what increases are happening to wages by type of job or job family, as we call them. So attorneys versus equipment operators versus clerks versus emergency communications folks and dispatchers. And sometimes we combine several of those categories. And then so the 3.4 number that you see that I've mentioned is really an average of what all of those job families are. And so my primary focus is to make sure that we can afford that. Then afterwards, we have conversations about what we can afford in terms of merit. Best practice for HR, if you're really trying to reward for performance, and you want to give top performers that have demonstrated through our evaluation process that they are a top performer, I mean, a 1% merit pool is not going to provide that kind of differentiation. In the past, I think last year our merit pool was 3%, and we were 4% the year before that. You really can begin to provide some differentiation in terms of merit and performance and reward top performers. This year's recommendation for 1% was largely driven by to stay under a flat mill levy budget. I could not afford to provide any more than that. Also, we did look at, I had some late incoming data from regional partners, mostly Kansas City area. Many of them are in the 3 to 4% salary increase range for 2027 from what we've seen. We do look at what's happening at the City of Lawrence. They're doing a 2.5% general wage adjustment and then a 5% step for most of their employees who are in the STEP program. So we could not afford that and stay under a flat levy. And also I felt like with a 4% assessed valuation growth, 4.9, I didn't feel like I could go any higher than 4. I've had conversations with department heads in the past about this is coming in terms of our compensation pool. I think they understand. And we've, and I have not, I think our team is prepared and is willing to make this work.
Thanks. Go ahead, Commissioner.
So how does it work between like the department offers promotions versus using a merit pool? Because that's still an increase in salary, but that doesn't come to us as part of a budget consideration. So how does that get absorbed?
We build it into each budget line. So you'll see that like if we have equipment operator 1s at one level and then we budget for them to go to 2s. All those promotions are done based off of the performance, position description and years of experience and performance based. And so those are budgeted on each line item. And, I would say really those sort of promotions really only happen in Sheriff's Office, Public Works, Emergency Communications, and a few other small places. Most of the youth services and CJS would have some of that. And then at a certain level, you can't just promote up forever and ever. At a certain point, like once you generally get to a 2 or 3, that's where you could top out. And then if you want to promote above that, there's a vacancy above that, and you've interviewed and you've qualified for that position.
I'm just thinking in terms of like a merit reward, like that system is already in place and captured in our budget that's separate from the like what's proposed is the 1% merit pool.
That's not available to everyone. So the promotions are not available to everyone.
Right. Yeah, I'm just saying there's like alternate ways where people are being rewarded for.
In some departments,
Okay.
in some departments not.
All right, thanks. I had another couple of questions and it's just, I said we learn something every budget year. So like the adjustments to pay, let me start with, so the market and merit, when those are presented in the book, we know what the 2026 budget was, we know what the 2027 budget was, and then in the reestimate, it goes away from that line and it's put into the actual salary lines.
Correct.
And all of them work that way except this longevity pay, which also shows up in the reestimate. And maybe this is beyond my scope, but I'm just curious why that is treated differently.
Because it hasn't been given yet. So it doesn't in 2026. So we're still holding it in reestimate for 2026 because it is given in October.
Okay.
So, but market merit is done in the first quarter.
Okay.
So
Thanks, I
that's why.
appreciate that.
And our longevity plan does not add to base pay. It is a one-time stipend, $40 a year if you've been here over 5 years, and it does not add to your base pay.
Okay, thanks.
Did you correct that issue with applying the market and merit to the whole year rather than 9 and 10 months?
Yes. So we have budgeted specifically this year. So if you look at like year over year, you're going to see even just on the market part, it's less. So it's budgeted to the day.
Question for Michelle. Have you ever plotted all the appraisals on a standard deviation bell curve?
I have not. No, I have not taken those 500 evaluations and done that.
Thanks.
I would say that we do talk a lot with departments about not giving everybody the exact same amount. And I'd say most of our departments are really good at that. Our performance evaluation system really doesn't allow you to give everybody the same amount and has a pretty prescribed scoring criteria.
And for commissioners' pay, is that already baked into the budget or will we vote separately on commissioners' pay?
It is baked into the budget if commissioners, and that is based off of our past practice, that all elected officials get the average amount that all county employees get. If the commission would like to take that away from themselves, that you all can have that power and we can remove it from the final budget. But our past practice was to put it on the line for all elected officials. So it's up to you to make that change.
The HR policy says all elected officials are in that except commissioners. And it says we're not subject to either the merit or the market increases.
It says you're not subject to the classification system, which is different. Classification system is like what grade are you in relationship to other grades, and county commissioners are not in our classification system.
But you're not placed in a pay range like the other, like all standard employees are.
So this is different. This is how you do market merit, and that changes from year to year and is not the same thing as our classification system.
Other questions, commissioners?
Well, I don't see the right person at the table, but I had a question about the commissioner's budget. Should we hold that for discussion or?
We can talk about it now. We've got time.
Okay,
I prepare that as a proposed. So
well, I was looking at the attorney fees, and that has grown considerably over the last 3 or 4 years. And I understand this year you had some big cases. It appears one of those has recently been settled, according to newspaper articles.
that specific piece of the litigation was not our litigation. That was a different situation. So I'm still engaged on that as a separate federal legislation related to the Buchhorn case, and it has not gone away.
Oh, okay.
And I would say every year, I think we have some big cases and then they're going to go away. And then another big case comes in its place. So there's, I wish we weren't spending as much money on attorney fees, but their rate has been held flat for many, many years. So this really is a result of the volume of potential litigation and legal assistance that we need. They review contracts, they review zoning and codes violations, they review resolutions, they review the code, they review lots of different documents. So it's also not just litigation, it's just pure legal assistance.
I'm just wondering if it's time to revisit having internal counsel, because a lot of standard stuff could be done in-house at a much cheaper cost.
Possibly. And we could provide an analysis for you on that, but generally if you hire in-house counsel, I'm paying an attorney 6 figures and a paralegal. And they're not doing litigation. So all of the litigation would be done by someone else. But so I think I'd still be spending around the same amount, if not more potentially. But it's something if the commission wants us to try to look at other counties and what they're spending on litigation, and if they have in-house counsel, that's something we could certainly do.
Thanks.
So I just want to circle back to the merit pool. I appreciate the context and sort of the historical nature of how that's changed and the way that administration obviously is looking at market first and has a very specific process for that. So given where we're at and that it's budgeted in at 1%, I guess I just want to ask the question. I mean, you talked about how that 1% means it's very difficult to differentiate between employees and departments. It's a relatively small number in the grand scheme of the budget totality before us. So I didn't fully form this question in my head, but I think I'm just curious to hear administration's feedback about, I almost hate to use this word, but how arbitrary does 1% merit pool feel?
It's very arbitrary. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's enough to really recognize merit. It's really simply based off of what I think the organization can afford for 2027. I don't really think it will recognize merit. I do think at 1%, I'm going to have a lot of department heads just give everybody 1%, because what's the difference between 1.25 and 0.75 at that amount? We'll still do evaluations. We still do a pretty rigorous process to provide feedback to employees. And that is done annually. So I believe that will still continue. And that's very important for employee morale and recognition and feedback. And we'll still do that. But at 1%, I think it will not really recognize our top performers.
Is there a percentage you think it actually starts to make a difference? I mean, if we didn't constrain you to a flat mill levy, where would you be?
I mean, I think 3, is about what HR professionals, you can begin to make some distinctions in that regard between, and that is a pool. So that means somebody's getting a 1 and somebody else is maybe getting a 5. So that's really how you can begin to look at that work. And you can really begin to make a differentiation.
And I think I feel like we've done we've had larger merit pools for the last several years. So we've really been able to get those top performers. And even when we did our compensation study, performance was a factor in the compensation study. So we didn't just give years in position 100%. We split that up between years in position, carried a percentage or was weighted, and then your performance was weighted. So that was another way to get some separation, if you will, of those top performers. So I feel like we've done a very good job of being able to reward those top performers.
And I will say this, and I don't think any of the elected officials are going to be mad that I say this. They have a lot more autonomy over their budget. They oftentimes do give increases outside of that. I don't do that. I can't do that. So it's one of those things that I do think I will have some elected officials that are not going to be happy with 4s, and that they'll give increases outside of that, since they are not specifically governed by our personnel policy.
And how do we pay for that?
They'll pay for it out of their budget.
They'll find it within their own department budget.
Maybe. I mean, then next year, if they come back to you and their budget's higher, that's how it happens.
That's helpful for me. And just to put a point on it, the merit pool is something that if it were to go away or just remain low like this for some years based on our assessed valuations, it can always come back, right? It's a constant reassessing of that, whereas that market is a much more sort of structured and rigid national process that informs all the calculations, right? Okay. Any other questions, commissioners, about any of the topics we've been discussing?
So do I hear you saying that if we set it at 1%, they still have the ability to reward or to set their, basically they just have the ability to reward their employees during their appraisals however they want, whether it be 1%, 0.75, 1%, 2%, 3%. They have that purview when they're doing their appraisals. I think that's what I hear you saying.
They have a range in which they can move in, but that means if somebody's getting above 1%, somebody else is getting lower than 1%. We do hold them to the average pool.
Yeah.
No matter where we set it, they still have their own purview because they each have a budget.
Well, there's rules. I mean, so I would say that particularly before, when we had a 3% pool, they really couldn't go above 5. Now I think with a 1%, it's going to be hard to go above 2.5. So we will ratchet that down based off of that pool, because the average has to be 1.
If I can
Okay.
clarify.
Elected officials,
Yep. I was
elected
just
being
gonna-
separate from other departments because they have a little bit more leeway. Is that what you're asking?
Okay, so you're saying that elected officials have more leeway than other department heads is kind of where we're drawing that distinction.
And
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would say it happens often where they give, where they go outside of that pool. I know sheriff's office, right after COVID, they were having a hard time hiring. They gave some one-time payments to some staff, some bonuses. We had some retention bonuses, some recruiting bonuses, things like that. But it is not often that people go outside of what the merit pool is.
Okay, commissioners, if we don't have any other questions, I think we can
Yeah.
at least excuse, oh, go ahead.
I got a
Sorry.
question for Tony. We were talking about turnover rates, and I suspect yours is higher than many departments. What is yours average?
Tony's is currently at 21.8, and it's down from a high of 33.3 2 years ago.
Yeah, we were at 40% 5 years ago, and
Yeah.
we've halved it down to 20. Part of that's compensation. Part of it's culture. There's a lot of different things that go into it, but yeah, my department it struggles at times, and that's just mainly because of the type of work that we do. It's not for everyone, but compensation is one of the things that has helped to keep these professionals in position where you start weighing the mental and the stress and say, is this worth it? And when you start getting compensated at a level that is a professional level, then that kind of weighs into that decision making comparatively to before.
What this may not be an average, and I know it depends on the individual, but what length of time is somebody on the job before they burn out, if you will?
Well, we have two different categories. Basically, we have tenured individuals and we have trainees. Trainees, if we can get somebody past 18 months, then they will usually stick around for a very long time. We have people that are in our organization that are employees that have been here for 30 plus years. Getting them past the training aspect and the start of the profession is the hardest part. Usually, typically, we're about 50% on trainees. And then when we get into tenure, we're actually quite low. That's what brings us to that 20% range. But yeah, it's a very difficult scenario to be in. But we're managing it.
You know, something that I've talked to Sarah about and, you know, mentioned to department heads, you know, while we're talking about budget is just being, Sarah has been supportive. I think this commission has been very supportive of training, you know, for staff. And when I say training, not just supervisor training, but I get requests from ECC a lot about, you know, doing some trainings specifically for what they do and not to make them better at their job, but maybe some mental health training on how to deal with the heaviness of the work that they do. These trainings aren't cheap, you know, sometimes they have to bring outside trainers in. I know Sonia emailed me about a training, you know, it was going to be, the price tag was around $12,000. We don't have enough staff to fill all those spots. So we were trying to network and work with other jurisdictions to see if they had anybody that they wanted to send from their you know, dispatch folks. So I think supporting that training budget specifically for mental health things and not just, like I said, not just training specific, you know, to your job and how to do your job better, but being supportive of that is really important. So I think, you know, I thank you for the support thus far on that.
Any final questions, commissioners? Okay, well, Jimmy and Starla, while you're here, as two county employees I see very regularly running between buildings and through all the hallways and in and out of offices. I just want to acknowledge that, especially the past 2 years, a year in particular, that your lives and your teams have been very busy. And it is noticeable. Also, the historic courthouse is looking fantastic, and it was done just in time for all those amazing photos on Mass Street for us to be in the backdrop of. And I was thinking about you, Jimmy, and how good the grounds are looking. And I know that with a new building too, that your teams are pulled in many directions and helping everybody's set up. So thanks for all your hard work. We appreciate it. All right, y'all. We've still got some time left, and I think Sarah's got some information to download into our brains about what staff would like from us, and it's an opportunity for us commissioners to make sure we're clear about the task ahead of us now that we're wrapped up with hearings.
Thank you. And really, I want this to be kind of a conversation with commissioners in terms of what do you think next steps should be in terms of where we go. I am concerned that we have 4 mornings left to figure out, you can have that if you want, 4 mornings left to get to an R&R rate and set an R&R rate on the 15th and make it through our deliberations. So it's staff's recommendation that we talked about this earlier, that we come back tomorrow morning and start with CFD 1 and revisit that discussion so that we can get a firmer idea of where you want to set their budget at and their R&R rate. So it'd be our recommendation to start at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning with CFD 1 and do that work. I also think I would really, I know this is a tight turnaround, so I guess I want to see if commissioners feel like they could give us their commissioner worksheets by tomorrow morning at 8. Or if that is simply not enough time to give us your worksheets by 8 tomorrow morning. If we were able to get them, we could then get them compiled, and I think we could make after that CFD conversation pretty productive. I think we could have some initial conversation about what commissioners have put in where in terms of those things. And I would really, since we are under a flat levy, I think we need to have some conversations about if things are added, how are we paying for them in terms of the general fund? So I guess I'd like to get some reaction from the commission on that.
I'm pretty attached to that weekend to feel like I've done a good job with it, but I wonder if there's a possibility of us putting forward, like, these are kind of our top points that we'd like to talk about that kind of frame both, the revenue and expense side for how we're going to move forward. Is that a possibility? I'll pitch this to the rest of you. In terms of, like, are there pieces on the revenue that we want to be looking at that would kind of help form whatever those buckets would be? Are there pieces that of larger ticket items that we definitely want to talk about rather than having everything done? And if everybody else can do it by then, I will put something together and hopefully have some ability to shift that and change it as we go along.
I'm trying to figure out how the sheet works this year compared to last year, because I thought last year we had these budget options and those showed up.
They are in there.
Well, I haven't figured out how to get there yet.
And we can stay after and kind of show you
Yep.
where they are.
Yeah.
So each of the budget options are in there. Last year, you had room in the commissioner's budget, which allowed you to fund some of them. You don't have that this year. So in the general fund, I need to know if you're adding something, what are we taking away? And that could be, a fee increase related to motor vehicle. It could be more of a transfer out of the behavioral health fund. But in the past, they were all listed over there, and then you subtracted it from the commissioner's line. I don't have that to give you this year. If you want to fund one times, they're under the cash reserve line. So, and we can show you where that's at.
Yeah, I need some training.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, Commissioner Dorsey, just to clarify quickly that maybe I misheard what you just said, Sarah, but there's nothing in the commissioner's contingency line right now, but
Right.
we talked earlier this morning about that $2.4 million number, which we were really just talking about the general fund and how that was
Yeah, I cut that.
space.
Yeah, I had to cut that from reserves. So those were adjustments that were made to the reserve line.
Okay, that
So-
was the total number. I think I was looking at it line by line and was not recognizing that was the total that you were giving us. But
No,
you
so-
were talking about how we're at 22% in the general fund
Correct.
now, and the room to go down to 20% is a
2
space
million.
for commissioners.
But that is one-time dollars.
One-time dollars. Thank you for clarifying. So you don't intend to put that in the commissioner's line
So
on the spreadsheet?
no, I think if you want to spend that, you're taking it out of the cash basis reserve line. So if you want to spend some of that, you want to move our fund balance from 22% to 20%, you're on one-time expenses, you're reducing the cash basis line.
So you're saying then if we basically then we're taking out, so if we want to
Correct.
move anything, we're removing
Yes,
from the budget.
correct.
Okay. All right. I just want to clarify.
Yeah. And another thing I've been thinking about that might be helpful in terms of how you all if we're talking about the behavioral health fund, there is capacity. So I really feel like there are conversations about the general fund and the behavioral health fund. As we mentioned in our overview, there's $2 million in capacity, ongoing capacity in the behavioral health fund. So Cardinal Housing Network or DECA, there is capacity for those. So I think sometimes dividing what you're thinking about in terms of the behavioral health fund is going to be very different than the general fund this year. Inside the general fund, if you add anything ongoing, I need to know how you intend to pay for it ongoing.
Thank you. Yeah,
Which is either a tax increase, a fee increase, or a reduced transfer.
Yeah, that leads into, I guess, a comment that I have is just that I do think it's important for us to be, like I have indicated on my sheets, all the things that are eligible for the behavioral health sales tax, and for us to be having those conversations. I mean, for me personally, I would love to start there just because there are a number of eligible things in the supplemental request, and to determine kind of philosophically, I guess, where all commissioners are at with what we might utilize there. And then that would leave us with all of the other things to talk about that would theoretically, those one-time expenses from the general fund or cash basis, or other ideas that commissioners might have. One question I have for staff, just to make sure I'm clear, and I haven't started playing around in the spreadsheet yet. It's always the last thing I get to. If we indicate that we support a supplemental request that can be funded by behavioral health sales taxes, that in the spreadsheet, as it won't impact the mill if we plug in yes to that?
Yeah, correct. I'm going to have Brooke throw it up so you
Okay.
can kind of see it.
A little bit of
So
demo.
everything on the behavioral health side is lower, is lower down on the spreadsheet.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
maybe we should just kind of walk you through it a little bit, and that might help you get where you need to go. And I'm going to let Brooke and I will probably both chime in on this. I'll grab
I'm mostly just asking that because, and I think it probably got cleaned up or fixed a little bit, but last year, because we were having kind of so much back and forth about whether things would come out of that fund or not, it was getting confusing about how it was messing with the calculations on the sheet. So I just want to make sure that that's a little bit more clear.
Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah, this is the top of the worksheet for the top of the general.
So commissioners, everything that is over here in red, that means that is included in the county's budget. If it's not in parentheses as a negative value, so if you did not want to fund something that was included in the budget, you would enter that negative value here and it would adjust the mill levy down, okay? If it is something that is not in parentheses, you would add that to the budget and then that would increase the mill levy, with the exception of, so we've got all of the supplemental requests that weren't funded over here in column it might be a different column on your spreadsheet because I have all of you guys on this master spreadsheet, for lack of a better word. But
But if you go past the blue column. So that's where so this is where all of your budget options is over here.
yeah. And so now you get down to this cash basis reserve line. And if there's something in here that you want to fund that's one time, if you enter that value into any of these cells, it does not affect the mill levy because it comes out of the fund balance that we're retaining to go into 2028. So anything above this line, it will calculate a mill levy value for you that either adds to or takes away from the flat mill levy that Sarah has recommended before you.
But
Okay.
just to be, this reflects the one-time portion. So let's say you wanted to fund the MIH team lead. We said 85,000 of that is one time. So you could take that from here, but if you want to fund the position, I can't pay for it out of the cash basis reserve. You'd have to pay for it somewhere else.
Thank you.
You put it in the white box.
I was just going to ask you, just to draw out the demo a little bit, can you do a quick example of like, if there's something that's already funded and a commissioner did not want to fund it, how would that reflect?
Absolutely.
column?
So the commissioner would just duplicate what is in column W. So you would enter a negative 5708, and then that would reduce the mill levy by 0.003 mils.
Jake,
Okay.
if we're messing this up, you're welcome to come forward.
And alternately, if you wanted to fund something that was not included in the commissioner's recommended budget, you would just enter that value here and then it should adjust the mill levy over here. We'll double check these formulas before we're done today.
Yeah, but if you put anything in there ongoing, it's going to raise the mill levy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need to clean up the levies.
Yeah, we'll clean up those formulas and we will get you guys some fresh spreadsheets. So I would say if you have made any changes to the spreadsheets that Jake has provided you thus far, you might want to save a local copy to your machine. If you need help doing that, I can show you how to do that. We've also made adjustments to the future year budget that Sarah discussed a little bit earlier. So we've updated those background tables so that they're calculating correctly on this page and that it sums up to the correct amount on the fund summaries that we've provided you. But we'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have before that time.
Can you scroll down to the behavioral health and kind of show them how
Certainly.
that's separate?
Yeah. So down here again, there's a non-appropriated
Can you
balance.
go up to and show them just like the beginning of it so they can see?
Yeah, sure.
Right there. So it's like,
Mhm.
right
Sorry.
there. Yeah, starting at line
There we go.
138.
Okay. So the Excel spreadsheet that staff has provided you, these are really big numbers, big aggregate numbers. The spreadsheet that staff provided you that shows you the different program areas and how those are budgeted. You guys could go in and cut any number of partners or programs should you choose to do so from each of those areas. But all of those are listed out here. And then, of course, you've got that non-appropriated balance and cash reserve balance here. And then Jake has put your one-time expenditures over here that have been requested of our partners. Scrolling down just a little bit further, this breaks out those program-specific budgets specifically. So that if there are a number of items that you would prefer to cut from those program areas, you would just have to go ahead and add them together here. I like to do that by equals, say a program was 256,000 and then there was another one that you wanted to fund or maybe take away, you could do minus, whatever. You just have to roll them up inside of this program budget. But again, all of those are itemized on that Excel spreadsheet that staff provided you in your booklet.
And then the budget options, so the new requests are over on the side.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
If we have a ongoing funding request and we're willing to consider it as a one-time. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think you would just put it in either under non-appropriated balance and just add a row, or you could, I mean, you could just make a note above that you only want to pay for this one time, and we will discuss it.
Could we get a couple of extra lines added in there and then everybody has access to that for some creative thinking?
Thank you. I was just going to touch on that. Sometimes if we add a row, it's hard to get to majority. If
Yeah, 'cause
only
when we're
one.
compiling them, we've got to sort all your roles.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, but
Yes.
it's still going to be extra work, but we'll do our best. I would just say if you just describe what you want to do too, that's helpful. So in your email to us, you can also say some of that stuff. Like, I put this in as ongoing, but I want to do it one time. You can do that.
And the way this is set up, when we put our numbers in, they're on the consolidated sheet.
Eventually, not till you submit it
not
to us.
automatically.
Not automatically.
So if I give you this at 7:59 tomorrow morning,
so yeah, what's going to
still got some time
Yeah.
to work on it.
So that's what's going to happen is that while we're in here talking about CFD, Brooke and the members of this team will be back there doing the compilation. And that's why I know this is a tight turnaround.
I do really like Commissioner Reed's idea of can we focus on just the behavioral health portion for tomorrow and have that turned into you and then kind of leave that general for the weekend.
Just to clarify, I wasn't really thinking about breaking it up in terms of the spreadsheets so much. I'll come back to my thoughts about the spreadsheet. In terms of structuring kind of conversation, to me, starting with the behavioral health sales tax, it just seems a little bit easier. Perhaps there's some more things to say yes to there. And then moving into the general for all the other requests. As far as the spreadsheet goes, I tend to agree with Commissioner Willie. The weekend is very helpful to me. So I am willing to try my best and will put my best foot forward tonight. It feels a little tight for me. And there's part of me that wants to hear a little bit more from fellow commissioners about what folks are thinking in terms of some of the bigger bigger ideas, whether or not, determining revenue neutral rate and where every commissioner is at with whether or not they have any specific goals around that so that we can make sure that those are ready to be set. Discussing any general thoughts or ideas around things like revenues and whether or not any commissioners see opportunities to change anything about revenues that would impact what the budget assumptions are currently throughout Sarah's proposed budget. So those are conversations I frankly would like to have a little bit with commissioners before plugging into every line. I have a pretty good sense of where I'm at with a lot of things, and things can and will change over the course of the deliberation days. But that's a little bit where I'm at. So just to clarify, I just think that talking about some things, I guess, topically, and getting a sense from all commissioners kind of where their main goals or maybe strategies and ideas is helpful to me.
And are we still going to bucket them like we did last year where those that have was it like the highest priorities or votes? I'm going to say.
Yeah. So that's the one thing I thought would be an advantage of if we were able to get it to us tomorrow, is that you would see, okay, 5 commissioners are already supportive of this. So we just need to figure out how to pay for it. 4 commissioners are supportive of this. We just need to figure out how to pay for it. And then if there's 1 or 2, well, then over the weekend, if that's your one item, you've got to prepare an argument to try to convince your fellow commissioners that that's what you want to do. So I would say that's the one thing, is if some of that kind of sorting can happen before the weekend, that going into it. But you're right. If not, you're going to get that Monday morning and we're going to start talking.
I guess what would be helpful for me would be to talk through the decrement list to see if there are any changes that we think we might be collectively looking at for some of the fundamental understandings of what money is available. And I'm thinking specifically about, we've used a tax delinquency rate of 2.5 in the past. We put it to 2 this last year. It's written in as 2% for a tax delinquency rate. Are we comfortable going to 1.5 as a delinquency rate? And it looks like Jean has some.
I'm comfortable going to 1.
So we can talk through that. I would just say that list was
I think, my strategy, I have things that I'm thinking of making reductions on that maybe nobody has shared here, and I include those in my spreadsheet, and I think that I'm listening to other commissioners who really like to have the weekend, and I'm sort of wondering if we want to come together and talk about revenue, maybe first just as the topic of revenue, and maybe also a little bit about one-time costs. I think there's some, I'm continuing to want to understand how we think about one-time costs, because of Kansas finance law, you could argue everything is a one-time cost because the next year you could not fund it. But I think it would be maybe a healthy conversation. If we need more time for the spreadsheet, maybe talking at least on the revenue side so we can agree what the inputs are that we're comfortable with. And then coming back on Monday after we've got a budget spreadsheet on what the outputs might be, I'd feel better. And again, one time to me, because we're looking at fund balances and I do have a question on the spreadsheet about cash reserve basis because it's not the number you just gave us. So we might need to clean that up. But if we could get some consensus maybe on some one-time things, and so we're really talking about what ongoing costs are in our spreadsheet, to me, that feels like something we might be able to accomplish tomorrow without necessarily doing the whole spreadsheet if people need more time. That's just a thought.
I think that's a great strategy. I'm going to tell you, it means commissioners need to start putting their cards on the table, because those normally you figure out what you want to do and then you figure out how to pay for it. I would just say, in my experience, that's how you've done this. So I think you just need to be willing to let's start talking. And I know Commissioner Anderson has a conflict on Tuesday. I am nervous about getting this done on time.
My conflict on Tuesday is for, unfortunately, 10 minutes.
Okay.
At 11 o'clock, I work Pacific time. So it's 11 o'clock our time, which is 9 o'clock Pacific. I have to give a presentation for 10 minutes. They may ask me questions for 10 minutes to national leadership. So if we wanted to adjourn for 20 minutes and then come back together, we could do that. Sarah has offered to give me some space here so I don't have to step away. I don't have to go home for 30 minutes and come back before the drive back to Baldwin. So we could do that if we're still, because I believe we will still be deliberating.
I'll be glad to have any time we can put to it. So that sounds great. I'd like to talk more with colleagues about the equipment reserve balances. Some of these I think we have or at least that I feel like I have a pretty good understanding, and some of them that I feel like could possibly, if we get some direction that it's allowed for some other one-time things that can't pay for anything ongoing. And I don't know what the rules are around bringing those back into the general, or if there are other conversations that need to be had with the staff people that cover those funds. But I just think there might be some conversations to be had there that would be, as to Commissioner Kelly's point, on the revenue side of things, not for ongoing, but if there are other people who are thinking about those things, it would be nice to know before we did the spreadsheets.
Yeah, so I'm hearing revenues one time and perhaps equipment reserve balances. I'm just going to tell you, we can talk about the equipment reserve balances. I'm not comfortable putting that into fund balance until you vote. So like, because there's a whole process to that. Like, so you can know what that dollar amount is, but it's not going to impact your spreadsheet, folks. It's just not. So at a certain point, that's when I mean, we really do need to know what it is that you want to add. I think we could do that and get started and see where we go. I just want to make sure the commission understands that we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Sarah. And I think, I mean, there is a little bit of a tension on time always at this juncture, I think. I like the idea. I do feel like it will be productive for us to talk about some of these big topics tomorrow and really get a sense of where commissioners' thoughts are. And I think naturally with some of those conversations, cards will be laid out on the table about bright lines that each of us already have and know. That's what's true for me, is that there's some bright lines that I feel quite clear about, and am highly doubtful that I'll be convinced otherwise, but always remain open. And then there are other things that I'm a little unsure how I feel about it completely, and whether or not I think that they're priorities for us to be considering. So that would be personally helpful to me. I think that it is possible for us tomorrow to be talking about some specific options that are in front of us without necessarily having the whole spreadsheet, and that could reduce the amount of things that we are then talking about on Monday, because come Monday, we will have a better idea of where commissioners are, I think, on a lot of things, and then I suspect that there might be not too many lines on the spreadsheet ultimately for us to be determining, is this a 3 and above commissioners, support this, and therefore, as Sarah said, we're going to figure out how to pay for it. And so the conversation becomes more about that, and making sure we have alignment on that versus the things that are only 1 or 2 commissioners support, and as we did last year, give space for those commissioners to make a case and to be persuasive if they want. But as I recall, we also moved on from those lines pretty quickly. So I think we moved through it pretty easy once we had it, but the foundational conversations do feel pretty helpful to me. And given the tight budget year that we have, even though we have I'm just going to say a crap ton of requests in front of us, an ever growing number of supplemental requests year after year. This is a year that it's hard to say yes to folks. And I think, to me, that means that we have fewer and more focused conversations to be had.
Would that be up to, and I'm glad to defer this to you, would that be up to the chair to kind of pick out some of those big topics for tomorrow? I don't know that necessarily needs to go to staff.
No, yeah, thanks. I wrote down, conversation about revenues, and I think that's kind of a large one. What are different commissioners thinking about? Do you have any ideas or strategies for what we need to change on revenue lines? The delinquency rate, a little bit related to that. A discussion about one-time costs, and to me, that's both the specific one-time costs that we're looking at and considering for this year's budget, and the more general philosophical conversation about how each of us are filtering that information and contemplating what is and isn't a one-time cost, and where we want to pull those dollars from. And then equipment reserves is a requested conversation. If there are other topics that other commissioners have on their mind, I'd like to hear that now, but also bring it up tomorrow.
I would be interested in a conversation about fund balance of community partners and what that, how we respond to what I consider, which by now the numbers are larger than the fund balance we keep at Douglas County. And just sort of how we're going to navigate that. I think I have my own thoughts on that, but I would also, I just, in a more general approach, we've sort of talked about that in past years around individual applications, but I also think I'd like to be more clear with community partners, sort of where we're at philosophically when it comes to their expected fund balances. But maybe that's just me who wants to talk about that.
No, I think it's a great conversation. It's come up a number of times over the years. It's come up a number of times in the past few days, including today with different partners. So I think it is a valid conversation. If nothing else, for us to all hear from each other how we're processing that information when we look at each community partner's budget sheet and are weighing what we think about their fund balance and its proportionality to the rest of their budget.
Agreed. And then we have others that are struggling with solvency and that have been here for decades and are truly struggling, have fundraising capacity issues and can't seem to get over that hurdle. And others that have truly gone way beyond that hurdle and have fund balances that are very, very healthy. So I think that'll be a really interesting conversation to have.
And I think that might dovetail with a general conversation about community partners, that the list of folks that we fund has some randomness to it in terms of their fantastic things going on in the county that support things that the county cares about that we don't fund. And I don't think there's any one of these partners that is bad by any means, but are there some who have matured and kind of grown past their need for us and have other sources well established? And I think that is an okay conversation to have too.
And I think I'd also like to know what is our role in maybe encouraging organizations to have when we have organizations that are struggling to raise dollars or are having solvency issues, what is our role in encouraging them to have conversations with like-minded organizations where they maybe could combine or integrate because there are solvency issues, where the organizations could then continue to do the good work that they're doing. And maybe we wouldn't lose those leaders and the programming that they have. But I don't know if that's our role. And so I'd be interested in having that conversation.
And I think it'll come down to, like, it's our choice to fund or not fund from the county. It's a very specific question. And what they do with that in the larger picture is not up to us. And so being careful that we don't overstep into those, like predicting what they should be doing next. I do think that it will be tough for the chair to wrangle us into, these are big topics. They all have to be relevant to putting our spreadsheets together for Monday, because there'll be plenty of things philosophically that I think we'd want to go beyond, but you'll just have to rein us back in. So lucky you.
Well, and maybe that's just something too, if commissioners come tomorrow with what are the topics, like if you think about tonight, are there other big topics, sort of larger picture issues that you want to discuss? So, I've got a list as well as the chair, but if you're thinking as you begin to think about this, what are those issues that are sort of rolling around in your mind that you want to discuss with your peers?
And I think to Commissioner Willie's point that some of the us differentiating what is relevant to the budget decisions we have to make for 2027 and what we're working with right in front of us right now, versus maybe some conversations that we think there's a bit more meat to that we need to ask for staff
Later.
to come back to later in the year.
That's all great.
I know one of the things that I was going to spend a little time on is kind of going back through our departmental budgets and just seeing where it seems like we have greater leaps than others, and not necessarily from like last year's budget to this year's budget, but like from previous years, 22, 23, 24, 25 of actual spent dollars. Like, are we trimming? Are we? I know we've asked Sarah to ask our department heads to kind of be pretty lean, because we were going to have this conversation. But I want to make sure that it's our prerogative as the commission to determine where the budget dollars go, and not just our department heads to decide to kind of keep holding funds that they may or may not be using.
And so if that's the case, if that's a conversation you want to have, I want to have those department heads back at the table to be able to respond to those questions. So knowing tomorrow, you want to talk to X department head, I can bring them back on Monday. So I would like to know tomorrow so that we can have that scheduled.
Yeah, and I don't have it yet. I'm
Right.
not clear on where I think there might be some capacity. And I would need some guidance on from those department heads on what that looks like too. And I don't know if other commissioners have any interest in that conversation at all. So.
Okay. I feel like that's a good start for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think
yeah.
we have plenty to dig into, and
I'd like to show you the cash basis reserve real quick for commissioners, since Commissioner Kelly mentioned that. So this is line 112. This would be the general funds cash basis reserve. So just to be clear, it's not the exact same thing as fund balance, because cash basis reserve is anything sort of above it's the amount above the 5%.
Yes, it makes up the remaining portion of the fund balance outside of the non-appropriated reserve, which is reported on this very last line. Okay.
So that's why it doesn't quite match up to the top of the sheet, but that's where we want you to track it. So that's where she put here on this. If you want to spend one-time dollars, that you have 2 million, that get us from 22 to 20.
I mean, your recommendation is not that we spend 16 million.
No.
Right.
No, that's what I want to be very
That's
clear.
why I was questioning
Yeah.
about the number.
So of those total dollars, yeah, and I would not recommend you go below 20 for a $200 million organization.
Can we get a similar kind of differentiation for the behavioral health sales tax fund? Because we've had that in the past, like this is what we have for like ongoing capacity, because we have things that have been funded and are, currently written in to be continually funded. What's our capacity there for ongoing versus what's our capacity for one time in the behavioral health?
We can add that to the spreadsheets and we'll send them out today.
All right.
Commissioners, any final burning questions or thoughts for today? Okay, have fun thinking. See you tomorrow.